What is up, Miami? To everyone listening from afar through the broadcast, we apologize ahead of time. This audio quality is horrible. There is no way for me to tell if it is or not. There's a little less than 100 of us here in Miami in person, having a great time, kicking back some beers in the anniversary of Executive Order 6102 when FDR tried to steal a grandparent's gold and Satoshi's symbolic birthday. So they are a priority, and if this broadcast doesn't come out with good quality, I will try and upload a better quality one afterwards. So with all that said, I think this is our first ever real in-person dispatch. Last year in Miami, we did one in our penthouse Airbnb because we thought it was going to be 200K by conference day. It didn't happen. But this one we actually made happen, tried to make it as legit as possible. I want to thank Ross for putting this all together. He was really fucking awesome, and he came to me and he was like, "We're doing Big Devs Miami. We got Jay coming to town, and we would love to see Dispatch opened up." It really could not have happened without him, so cheers to him. With all that said, I mean, we have our great guests here. All of them are return guests on Citadel Dispatch. We got NVK. How's it going, NVK?
Hey, hi.
Can you?
Oh, it's.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Just speak loudly.
Yeah. So yeah. Hey, nice to be here. It's like Bitcoin Twitter.
Thanks, NVK. We got our good friend Evan here. Evan Clutis. What's up, Evan?
Hey y'all, how's everyone doing today?
Thanks, Evan. You want to go? What are you saying?
I just want to say, it's been awesome seeing the show grow over the last year. Hat tip to Matt for putting out high quality signal every week. Just humbled and honored to be a little part of it.
Thanks, Matt. That means a lot. And thanks to all the priests that made this possible, and especially our constant return guests. Paul, how's it going?
Hello, thank you for having me.
We got Paul Miller here. What's up, Paul? And now we have Tony. How's it going, Tony Giorgio?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Good to be here. Again, on Citadel Dispatch. Always love being on. Just had to win Matt the whole time, so it's always great.
Fuck
You know,
yeah.
we became friends from Citadel Dispatch chat.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Because he was chatting and I was on an episode, and I was like, I like this the way this guy thinks.
The cut of his jib.
I like the cut of his jib.
And now you guys are just constantly working together, right?
Look at this guy's jib.
So where do we want to start? What do you guys want to talk about? I have it pretty open-ended. I was thinking we only have an hour. I was like kind of wanted to make it a little bit juicy, and we have MVK here, and we have Paul here. Should we have a little conversation about open source licenses?
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess to get started, why don't you go through NVK, your thoughts for the change in Cold Card's open source license, and then we'll have one of these guys jump in.
Yeah. So I think what happened with us is that we realized that the business is as important to the security of the device as the software and the device itself. So you cannot make really secure hardware without having a profitable business, right? And CoinKite has always been sort of like, it's a lifestyle business for us. We do it because we want to. And we figured out that unless you have the rotating revenue and capital to invest in, security research, and you have real equipment, and you have to have very large orders of manufacturers, so you get the good stuff that's under NDA from the manufacturers of the chips, because you want to know all those little flaws. And to do that is very hard when you have very turnkey cloners, right? You can have somebody, sort of contribute to your code base, that would be great. But when people just take and don't give, it makes it so that it's very hard to have a business around it. And you know, we for us it's more important to have a secure device that than it is for us to have something that is like pure on the license base.
So let's just unpack that a little bit. To the people who don't know what the controversy is, Cold Card was historically a free open source license that was non-restrictive. Anyone could modify it. Anyone could change the code. They could they could add to it. They could distribute it. They could sell it. They could do whatever the hell they wanted to do with it. And then this company, Foundation Devices, came out. NVK didn't want to mention them by name, but I just did. And they took that code base and they raised a bunch of VC money off of it before they even shipped anything. And then NVK changed his license to a more restricted license that was not free and open source, that was source viewable, that basically allows people to modify it, but they can't distribute and sell it.
Yeah, so it's even more permissive than that. So what we had is actually an extremely restrictive license, copyleft, right? You're restricted to have the left, like that license has to survive, right? So that means that anybody who copied that source code needs to make it public again.
It was specifically GPL, right?
It's specifically GPL. And funny enough, you actually require the state to enforce that license. So it's very non-libertarian. And funny enough, Satoshi chose, in my opinion, MIT because you can build a business on top of MIT and you can have that code base inside your code base and do whatever you want. So, you know, in my opinion, truly FOSS is MIT, right? GPL is a complicated license that is a product of its time. I think it's about the same. Anyways, so it's important that you have to essentially like be honest about the fact that like if there is people contributing, it's great. But we were essentially a single source code, right? Meaning we pay people ourselves to write that source code. We have like a contributor here and there, but 99% of the source code is ours. So it's not like a community project. It's not like you're just converting the work of a lot of people into a new license and sort of screwing out. There's no rug pull. It's just ours. So much so that we were allowed to do that change. Anyways, so that's where it stands. We just don't want to be in the same position that a lot of open source projects are, where the only people who reap the benefit are, say, Amazon, Google, and the developers are then left sort of like begging for money. It's just not something I'm for.
So how could a business be competitive with your business if you were using the same open source code base? If you're saying that your business model doesn't work if anybody can easily clone you, how does their business model work? How does anybody? Is nobody making any money?
So hardware is hard, right? So there's like hard sort of like science involved and like very sort of it's a much larger upfront investment in code that you would normally find in standard software projects, right? And we lose in different ways. For example, there's the affinity scamming, right? Where said cloner will go on podcasts and say, hey, this is as secure as this other device, right? This is as good. And then they fuck up, and then people think that because they have the same code as we do, you know what I mean? Now we have a problem too. So for example, this device that's a cloner is using a pound secure element, right? There's not a lot of information out yet because everybody's under NDA, but everybody has moved on, for example, from the secure element version. They haven't because they don't have inventory of the new secure chip, right? But now, again, it's just saying, hey, but we are the same security architecture, right? So there is the issue with that. And then there's the issue of like chipping away from our market, right? From the product that we build, the brand that we build, and all the effort that we put into this. I don't, it's not my spirit to stand for that.
So I guess my main two objections are the first one is the idea that I'm going to have the state solve this, which is any license that's at all restricted.
That's GPL.
Is
GPL, the state.
All licensing
Okay.
is saying that the state is going to solve it
Sure.
for you, other than fully permissive. But then the other side would be from a security standpoint. I feel like I would be reticent to look at your code based on how you have talked about people who have copy and pasted your code.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oops, I was browsing through here to check your
Yep.
security. My finger slipped. I hit Command C, and now I've got one of your functions in my code base, and you're gonna like drag me.
We
through
don't
the
care. So our license.
That's one hell of a finger slip.
Yeah. So yeah,
It really is.
that's it's kind of funny because they use the code that we wrote 100% on their marketing material as a picture. It's kind of hilarious. They removed the comments.
The comments are changed.
Yeah, the comments were changed. A lot of people pick up on that, but the point is this: first, most people are not like, it kind of sucks, but they're not qualified to review this kind of security level.
Yeah.
There's like very few people that can. What we need is people to review that is building, right?
What you need is to write it in Rust.
The what?
You need to rewrite it in Rust.
Right, exactly. Rust is a shitcoin. So anyway, so all licenses are state-based, of course, right? Otherwise, like, if you go back to if you don't go back to proper libertarian principles, you'd say the way to resolve that is by having trade secrets. You cannot have trade secrets in open source, by definition, right? So those two things are kind of still incompatible. We don't have a good answer for that. The other thing is, raising VC on top of somebody else's code is also fiat, right? It's also based on the same system that licenses are based on, violence, whatever you want to call it. So, in a world in which I can build my thing and there isn't VCs available for a cloner to go shop around my stuff, it's cool. Listen, we tried. That was the goal. We're going to try to make this that way. It didn't work, so we switched it, right? We're a defensive company. We will behave defensively, right? And I guess like another, so there really is it's the issue with the VCs that will just willy-nilly sort of invest in a company like that, probably because they didn't even know that it was essentially cloned source code. And we actually put out an extremely permissive license. It's extremely permissive. You can do whatever you want with the code. You can copy, you can sell it, you can do whatever you want. You just cannot build a cloning company. That's the only restriction.
Yeah, what is it specifically? You can't make a commercial product out of it?
Exactly, that's it.
So you
That
can't
is just
sell it.
You can sell it. No, you can sell yours. So you as the user is protected.
What do you mean you can sell yours?
Your unit,
Yeah.
right? It's your property.
Oh, like you can sell your individual code.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
You just can't start a competing.
Thanks.
Hey, you only bought one, right? You only bought one.
Well, I mean, I lost all my Bitcoin in the treasure phishing hack. Anyway, I don't use your devices. So I mean, you guys are all major proponents of free open source software. Do you not have any comments for NVK? Is he in the right here? Is he?
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like we're all kind of LARPers in a way. Like we're running, we're using like open source money, right? And permission, like we don't need the state permission, right? But then we all kind of turn around and we like all have permission, like government permission-based companies. So like at the end of the day, like what Paul said, we are asking the state to enforce licenses, basically.
Yep.
That's just kind of the reality of the situation right now. Like, if you want to, like, honestly, I would be all for like an anon out there, just ripping off, just licenses left and right, or like code that's licensed left and right, and not giving a fuck because it's like, well, if they created this anonymous, like quote unquote business, and anonymous, they're not going to go to the state to solve the problems. I would be all for quote unquote rip-offs of some of this stuff. I would love to get into a situation where we aren't going to the state to like have businesses be operating, and then we can actually kind of solve it. But I guess like the reality of the situation is like, that's kind of the environment we're all in right now. We have to sort of be defensive. So I don't know. My thoughts have sort of like changed over the last few years.
Just to add to that, I think there's a general sort of camaraderie and sort of like morality that comes with all this. There is a difference between you contributing to a code base and then forking off because you don't like it or because you want to try something different, as opposed to just taking the whole code base, removing the comments, and starting a company, right? That's what I call a dick move.
Well, that's why my original suggestion is just add to your license that if I clone this and start a company, I'm a dick.
We actually.
I call it ambassador.
Yeah, the dick clause.
Put a dick clause in there, and they have to keep the dick. It's like a
on the screen.
clause. So yeah, put it however you want. So if they get hacked because they were actually bad at what they're doing, well, it's like, it says I'm a dick right on the.
That's right.
Right on the license.
Funny enough, we actually thought about making a joke license but for real on the product, it's like everyone can use this for commercial purposes, but you.
That would be beautiful. I just think zooming out, why I like open source so much. I think because we live in a world of so much regulation. Like I had this thought the other, like a little shower thought of we have sales tax, right? So every time you want to sell something, so every time you transfer ownership with paid for by money, there's a tax. That limits all activity where we might want to have a high frequency exchange of goods. I couldn't even imagine why someone is selling a toaster back and forth, 1,000 times a second. But that's literally impossible. So I think every regulation has some sort of a hidden cost like that. And I think information cannot be owned. That's a ridiculous concept. And so when we add some state-based enforcement, and now Katy Perry's getting sued for her song because it sounds a little bit like other song. Well, it turns out most of the music I like sounds like other music. Yep. And so now so we're always, when we're allowing the state to dictate our actions in this way, we're really limiting what is possible. And with code, we're limiting who can be involved, how fast we iterate, who can verify, who can modify, who can sell it. And so I'm just worried about it in that sense. That said, I haven't built a business based on a hardware business based on open source code. That is a pretty rare thing right now.
It is. And there is a reason why you don't see open hardware out there, right? It's not like you can just sit and apply your knowledge and boom, you have a product, right? With hardware, you have to buy all this stuff. You have to iterate with all this stuff that has hard costs, right? There's all this overhead that's completely upfront. That's your R&D, right? That you have to recuperate if you want to still exist, right? And if you have unfair competition, right, it's possible that you simply won't exist, right? Because they can undercut you because they haven't spent all the money doing their R&D. So they can technically take that margin out of their product, right? And just go compete with you unfairly.
This is another shower thought. Sorry if I have too many shower thoughts right now, but we had an industrial revolution, and we made so many products cheaper, and we were kind of ramping up in our civilizational level. And then I don't know what year it was, but somehow we kind of leveled up, and we never got to the point of industrializing industrial.
I think we did. If you look at an iPhone, for all the hate that Apple gets, it is absolutely remarkable what's inside here. This is like a pinnacle of civilization. What's literally done inside this thing. You have one of the most modern computers that exists. You have 17 radios. This thing can talk in any country. Okay, it's just. Most people just can't understand because it looks like a bar of soap that's shiny on one side, right?
What I'm saying is that we democratized having servants because we made dishwashers. but we didn't democratize industrial production. Like they're very,
Well,
because
the production we did is the inventing of the things that go into productions that hasn't, right? Because you still need a human to invest time, capital, opportunity, cost to go invent something. Like we don't make cold cards in my house, right? We we have a factory that then makes cold cards. It happens that we now like have most of the production of the factory, but like it really is just us sort of inventing a thing, make it into a thing that can be actually produced in quantity, which is completely different, right? It's not like a Raspberry Pi that like has some stuff on top. That like no, this is like a thing that has access to parts, it has access to manufacturing methods, right? That then goes into production and can be sort of like made many times, so people can sort of use it in an industrial capacity. Um, and I think like a huge part of the FOSS movement, especially because Stallman was a bit commie, is that that's why I'm more on the MIT side, right? On that sort of discussion, is that people don't understand business. So it pisses me off. I know so many people who are absolutely brilliant, not making money. I want them to make money to make even more brilliant things.
yeah. But I also think of open source as really as charity. Like it is a gift you're giving the world, and you're trying to instead of making a product that is just a one-to-one exchange and they get something out of it, you get something out of it. You're giving something to basically everyone all at once.
People are not equal, and charity is not a way of moving society forward. I am a huge fan of charity.
Love charity.
Yeah, so like I love charity on a personal level, right? Like and helping people that may need. But charity is not how you invent everything. Like again, I like to use the Apple example because they are as close as it gets, right? Like it's all close, although they still have real units. But like you wouldn't be able to invent like a process to make sapphire in scale if it wasn't for Apple.
Well, but we also, we can't do space shuttles at scale. That was just like fiat folly. Like
Yeah.
let's do all these ridiculous engineering things that we can do because we're stealing everybody's money. They can do those things because they have sort of a monopoly position.
Well, it's not really. I mean, like Android copied most of the things that they did successfully, right? So much so that now we have two options: a bar of soap and a bar of soap, right? There is no creativity in phones anymore. We've achieved phone nirvana in terms of design, which is a flat screen with some 50 cameras on the other side, right? Because this is what people need, right? Now, all the advancements that they're doing, which are absolutely remarkable, are inside the box.
I don't know that it's exactly what people need. We don't really know what people need because most people can't make what they want themselves. People can't make their own tools, so they have to receive tools from whoever has enough capital to build it.
If you ask a user what he wants, is the meme of Homer Simpson making his car. Remember, like with all the toaster and the dash and
The kids are in the back, so
exactly right. Users don't know what they want because they don't know what's possible either, right? It's trying to make a business out of open source. And listen, we still have another 50 projects that are all open source, and we contribute to open source, and we fund open source, and all this shit. It's just this specific code base has some restrictions, right? It's not simple. Like, and there is very few companies that do it, like especially on hardware. And like, I'm trying stuff out. Some things work, some things won't, some things people love, some people who hate us. It's like
So, since the cloner came out, do you think it's significantly hurt CoinKite's business?
no. I mean, I know the numbers because people talk, but like it's not like no, it didn't.
So maybe it would
Maybe.
make too much difference to your bottom line if you had a full FOSS license.
So here's an interesting thing. Since they started, all their users are asking for all the features that we added after the license change. So they haven't introduced any single feature or bug fix since they changed the code. They changed some stuff based on their things, but and their users are asking for the stuff that we added after, and they can't just pull and merge. It's fascinating, isn't it? That they were not capable of doing those things, but they would get those things for free if we change the license. So who knows? Maybe if they go out of business, we change the license back.
I think you have like a really, passionate consumer base. I think you have a great product, and I think ultimately, even if you did have that FOSS license, I think you guys would continue to strive and prosper.
Probably.
That's all I'll really say on this front.
Well, thanks for liking the product.
But yeah, I mean, I really don't have a problem really with these restrictive licenses in commercial sense, as long as the users really, have the liberty to do with it what they want. More so, I have more problems with people like, falsely advertising their license as FOSS when they're not. I think you guys did a good job switching it on the website to being source viewable. That's a good step.
I did that just because sort of tired of drama. I still disagree with OSI.
There's some nuance to the debate.
Yeah.
OSS versus FOSS.
Yeah.
What's OSI?
So OSI is this org that claims to be the arbiter of what definitions exist for FOSS, non-FOSS, FOSS. So I think there is I think we lose a lot in this space because it turns off a ton of extremely talented people that are not into the true, fully open source thing, the free as in freedom, right? Of that license. They would gladly contribute, and their contribution would be massive. There's a lot of people that are incredibly talented working in a basement somewhere getting paid. They would totally contribute to this if they could have some restrictions. And I think there's a massive difference, right? Because people try to use the FOSS, meaning free open source versus open source, just open source, as a way to sandbag projects that are not free open source. So they say, if you're just source viewable, you're closed source, right? Because they're trying to gaslight the fact that it is viewable and it is verifiable and it is maybe editable and copyable, because they may have a competing product. So they want to sort of create this flame wars around this, and it's such a shame, because the only people who gain from that is it's Amazon and Google. The money that Amazon and Google make from open source software that the devs are not making is monumental. AWS makes more money than Amazon products, and it's all essentially false.
Isn't that an argument for GPL over MIT?
No, because GPL wouldn't matter, right?
No, because they don't use GPL software because they don't want a poison pill of needing to contribute back to open source in that situation.
Yeah, so when you have a GPL
They like
license,
MIT because they can just rip it and do whatever they want.
They use a lot of GPL stuff.
when you use a GPL licensed product in your stack, right, the rest of the stack pretty much has to be opened up,
Kind
right? So if someone wants to, perhaps, pull in an open source project into maybe a more greater commercial thing, maybe they're giving out grants. In a lot of cases, they might ask you to move your license from GPL to MIT, or at least do a dual licensing thing. That's the biggest distinguish between the two licenses.
Yeah, copyleft gets very complicated very fast, and it gets complicated very fast because people get lawyers involved very fast too, because it's copyleft. Anyways.
Well, thank you guys for this conversation. I feel like everyone was pretty fair with it. I was hoping it was going to be juicier. Wait. So this is not me.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah, you were.
But
Can we get a little juicier?
Yeah, can we?
Yeah. So my main problem with open source licenses, number one, misrepresenting what kind of license you really are. That's a really big one. But the other thing that really grinds my gear is when you steal someone's source code. And Rodolfo, this sort of goes to you. This is not about the Trezor license, but rather another project I feel like you recently took code from. And it's called Bitcoin Bounties. And funny enough, the funny thing about this is that we have the guy who started Bitcoin. No. He's on the panel right here, and I'm gonna just set this bomb off and escape for a minute. So Paul, here, you take over.
Yeah, I like GitHub repo. Thank you. I had a GitHub repo called Awesome Bitcoin Bounties.
Yeah.
And
We were listed there.
it became hand slipped and he
Yes.
command C.
Yeah, 100%.
And then command V and
100%.
a beautiful website is bitcoinbounties.org.
And I even asked Paul to maintain it too.
Yeah. Well, I was so grateful because here's my mindset. This is charity.
Yeah, no, that's a total charity project. We paid for people to develop that site, and here.
And it's beautiful, and I love it. I have no beef with you. But also, it was closed source because I forgot to put a license.
No, I mean, it was so bad that the guy literally copied you as the author.
Yeah, I saw
Did the
that.
dev that did
I
it.
saw that. So I'm just saying that you're currently infringing upon my rights.
It was it different license?
There was no license on it.
Then it's definitely infringement. See, this is how bad licensings are. If there is no license on a project that's out there, you essentially have to infer that it's closed source. But the source is open and it's viewable. It's a clusterfuck.
So like what happens, post hyper Bitcoinization, post Bitcoin world, the state's way smaller. Does everyone just use everyone's code? Is copyright over?
No.
Is trademark over?
People are gonna move back to the old days, which is trade secrets. I see. This is like a lot of open source people don't understand that the default state of a business, right, is to protect the value that it created so that it can generate a profit, right? We're all more permissive. We're all trying to build a better world, so we're trying to do these things in an open source way. Sometimes it fails, sometimes it succeeds. But the default place before these licenses was what Mises describes himself as trade secrets, right? So if people cannot find a way to protect all the effort that they put in, meaning if they are building something that can be easily sort of revved up and cloned, is they will just close it. That's kind of what happened to Ledger, by the way. Ledger, way back then, was BTC Chip. That was the name of the product. It was actually open, but a bunch of cloners started to show up. Trezor actually changed their license to Microsoft's viewable library only, and then they got so much flack from the community that they then rolled back that commit on GitHub and changed to GPL from MIT. So they themselves do the same thing. It's just we don't give a fuck. So we're like, okay, we're gonna move this to something that we think should be.
I just feel like what are they so scared of? It's like you write some code and people copy it and do random shit with it.
Well,
What did you say that?
You're asking NVK, what is he so scared
What
of?
are you, sorry, I said,
Yeah,
let me rephrase.
what are you so scared
What are you
of?
so scared of? Like, your position of strength, you have the beloved cold card.
We're gonna maintain the position
You
of
just, you
strength.
don't think, but you're asking your mommy government to protect you.
Yes, the same way you're asking your government to make sure your airplane was checked before you flew here. Some form
Why
of.
would I know?
Yeah, yeah,
I want to abolish the TSA. I think literally,
No, that's not the TSA, the FAA.
Well, let's abolish them too. We have the low flight frequency because of all this spacing. We don't have flying cover. We have all these regulations that make our
Listen.
flights probably 100 times more expensive than they have to be. Because
You're
of
preaching to the
organizations.
choir. The problem is we do live in a fiat world.
Yeah.
And as long as we have fiat capital available for somebody to just clone stuff, okay? Because here's what could happen, okay? So let's say it is still subpar, right? The device that a cloner has. But they're very good at sales to VCs, they find, say, 100x capital. They could do exactly what Uber did to taxi drivers. They can go, they lower the price, they take everybody out of business. They lower, and then you know what they do
I've been to New
after?
York
They raise.
before Uber and after Uber.
That's just your city. See, like in my city, now Uber is more expensive than taxi driver. They rug pull. They took half of the taxi drivers out of business, right? And then playing unfairly, right? Because the poor taxi drivers in Toronto don't have a choice. They have to buy that stupid fucking medallion, right? And so they have to charge a lot more, and their price is actually mandated too. It's just like you can't escape the tentacles of the state living in a world that we live in.
The state is designed to you have a successful business, you become friends with the state, and you have the state try to protect
Yes,
your
they
business.
ownership.
And what we need is a lot more creative structure. We need businesses going out of business all the time and failing all the time because they're not actually serving people anymore.
How do you put in the VCs in that? Because see,
Screw the VCs.
yeah, but see, you know,
But
you
not
don't.
my side.
Yeah, no, listen, I know some good VCs, but like just in general, the dirty VC, not the good VC, right? See, you don't live in a vacuum, right? You can still have somebody come and essentially undercut you by giving free product for a year, right? And then you go out of business, right? And then they jack up the price again. Consumers are still fucked, and the consumers now have a worse product. This happens in a lot of. This is literally Peter Thiel's like model. It's like you find an industry, right? You break the legs of every competitor. You become a monopoly, and then you go and you jack up the price. So I still don't have an answer on how to handle that model, right? If I find that answer, and that includes having even more permissive licenses, I would. I just don't have an answer.
Abolish the FAA.
Abolish the FAA. I don't know, man. See, if you look at the accident rate on private airplanes, which is still FAA certified, but now the pilots are not as much because it's the dude who flies on Sunday, they fall a lot more than flying commercial.
The FAA also instituted the mask mandate.
You know, I struggle with this a little bit because, see, amateur radio, right, is a licensed privilege in pretty much every country, right? Because, you know, with the right gear, you can literally stop all flights within like 30 kilometers of your house. And it's like, talk about $200-300 worth of gear, right? So what they did is they licensed everybody because at least the people learn how to do it. Like, I hate licenses. I hate the barrier of entry for people to have this thing, but I also don't have a good answer to that. Because
Yeah, just ground all the planes until we figure it out.
it's
I tell this anecdote all the
It's a
time.
little
I
bit
probably
of a-
already told it on this podcast, but you know the reason we have Wi-Fi is because 2.4 gigahertz
Yes.
is not used because our bodies are made of water and water absorbs 2.4 gigahertz. So it's like the shitcoin of spectrum. So nobody wanted it, and so they like, well, what if we tried to solve all this interference, and they made Wi-Fi because it was unreserved.
but you know 2.4 actually goes through walls, which is quite nice. While the original cordless phones were about 700 to 800 megahertz, right? And that's the same as your microwave. That's why your cordless phone never worked till the microwave was on. And it shows that it leaks. But those didn't go through through walls as well. Yeah, no, spectrum is complicated. But it gets tricky, right? I mean, we do live in complex societies with very complex like infrastructure. Maybe that's a product of government getting their hands in everything. But you know, I don't also subscribe to the all or nothing either, right? I mean, like, you know, no government but governance, right? Like, humans still need to organize themselves and find like some way around that. And as we invent technologies that have like more outsized secondary effects and more externalities, you do have to find ways of you know, dealing with that. It's like, you know, your neighbor not having, you know, fire alarms and you having adjacent walls, right? Do we want to mandate fire alarms? No. Geez, how this could get my house on fire?
Abolish fire alarms.
That's anyways.
I mean, at least like fire alarm regs. You can still have your own fire alarm if you want one, right?
Yeah, somebody could.
So I mean, we have 20 minutes left. One of the coolest parts about dispatch to me is audience participation. And obviously, you guys aren't in the live chat right now. I was kind of thinking about like, is anyone here interested in Q&A? Is there anyone who has a question who wants to participate? If you do, raise your hand at some point. I see a hand over there.
There is a hand.
Can someone pass them a mic?
Thanks, Bob.
So this was a really awesome discussion because I see both sides of the picture. So I guess I'm wondering for Paul, like, what is your solution to this issue? Like, just open source it, and if somebody copies the code, like your product, if it's better, will survive. Is that your take on it, or am I misunderstanding?
There's a really good talk on this from
Stage is over there now. This is also.
The guy who's making Precursor, which is an open source mobile device, not a phone, and he's all in on open source hardware. And he gave a TED talk about the difference in the culture between America and China, and how all these like manufacturers in China will publish open source hardware schematics. And the idea is that they're trying to attract business by democratizing the knowledge, and they have the specialty which is building. So that's not obviously, and so basically you have in the United States, IP heavy, a lot of the big innovators, but where do you actually make it? You make it in China. So I think there's something really interesting there, but I think what the big principle is just like trade secrets if you need them, and don't live in fear. Like just stop being so afraid.
So this is a fascinating thing. Do you know why China does that? Because China doesn't build software. It only builds the hardware. And the hardware can be reverse engineered. So you take the design, they already know, my design goes to a Chinese factory, they can just in 10 minutes remake my board.
Software can be reverse engineered.
Well, yes, but the kind of talent and the kind of culture you need to have to make good software still doesn't exist in China, right? So much so that most of Chinese projects are still have either crappy software, right? I mean, if anybody used DJI drones, right? I mean, it's something, the app that they use. But the hardware is absolutely brilliant, right? So hardware and software are very different. But when you make the whole banana as a company, right, you have both problems and both solutions, right? So it's like you really try to straddle a very complicated line there of how do you handle this stuff, right? How do you handle competitors? How do you handle the factory trying to copy you? For example, we don't make the stuff in China, mostly for security, but it's not a simple thing. And all the chips, that really is where the magic is, not the PCB and some stupid LC circuit or whatever. Like the actual chips are fully closed licenses.
I worry about that when we have a lot of special magic, and maybe that's an argument against trade secrets, but it is not a guarantee that civilization progresses up and we get smarter and we know more and we learn more. It's very easy to lose knowledge, civilizationally, and to drift, and if we don't manage to pass along information, because we have to hide it or we protect it so people don't feel like they can look at it.
But that's why, I wish we had just better moral compass, because none of this shit would be necessary, right? If people just didn't come and build a business on top of your stuff immediately, we wouldn't have changed our license, right? Or other people would have contributed back. They could have contributed back to our project, right? And then we would not feel morally entitled to do that either, right? That's where the trust and verify part comes in, right? We're still humans and we still need some trust. We still need to sort of find some cohesion and sort of work together towards things. So we have to trust each other to not be dicks. It's don't be a dick really is the best way of handling business. And when people are dicks, you need a solution.
Trust is a scaling solution.
Exactly. But Bitcoin's the exact opposite of that, right? Just assume everyone's a dick and it still works well.
Exactly, right? Because
That's the beauty of it.
but also Bitcoin is also MIT and it can be embedded in any other thing.
But then also open source, software that you can verify is also operating under the same assumption. You don't have to trust that people aren't a dick because you can verify it yourself, right?
Well, that's the challenge that we straddle, right? Like we cannot have trade secrets, right? Because then you're going to be able to verify. So like it's a very complicated place to be in.
Oh, we got another question over here. Oh, you got a mic. Sweet.
Hey guys. Oh, that's loud. My name is Michael. I'm a software engineer, pretty new to the Bitcoin space, I'd say within the past year and a half or so. So I've worked at several very big companies, tech and non-tech. I've worked at a few small software companies, health tech companies, etc. And on this like note that you were saying of like having a moral code to some extent, my question is like I have witnessed many times people finding closed source codes, code that doesn't have a license, and so it's implicitly closed source, or code that is licensed, right? But then in small and big companies, if their code isn't open source, right? Like how are they going to get attacked when what I've witnessed multiple times is these places like just straight ripping the source, refactoring it even to completely like obfuscate the fact that it has been copied, and then launch a product on it and like not credit anyone, completely unannounced, right? Less of a question and more of like a comment that I don't know if like it's being thought about, but I'm just curious, like comments on that.
Like, from like a libertarian or anarchist perspective, you can't steal information. So in a sense, nobody's being harmed in that act. And that's kind of how I view it. So yeah, they went and copied a bunch of code. And as far as was it illegal? I mean, it's just a whole mess.
Yeah, so when someone like hit that fork button and they start building it out, right? They still are not forking the reputation of the company. They're not forking their customer base. There's a whole other social component to it that just can't be recreated at the click of a button.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that it depends on what the scale and what parts of the system it touches to. We assume that all our new test suite is being used by, say, Cloner, right? But we can't prove it, right? And they'll probably delete it from their computers if there was ever a concern. And it's I think I'm a capitalist first, in a sense. I want people who create value to society to be remunerated for the value that's created. I don't like to see brilliant people having to beg for money. And we do live in a fiat world still. So I'd rather they be pragmatic, figure out a way of monetizing their brilliantness so they keep on doing that and adding value to society, right? And maybe they change the license as the last version went or something. There's no clear answers. But for as long as we have the money printer, the incentives are malaligned, right? And that malalignment is what causes people to be dicks.
So how does it change post Bitcoin then? You keep saying like we live in a fiat world, we have fiat problems. What is the change?
For one, you can't just go and build hardware and then undercut your competitor because you're not going to have access to free capital. Right? Who's going to give you free capital in a world where the opportunity cost is high?
All right, so tell me if this is stupid, but okay, so as far as licenses go, right now the state obviously is the open enforce, but theoretically in like Ancapistan, couldn't you have a situation where like you have
Where?
Ancapistan.
Ancapistan, that libertarian anarchist situation that we're all, maybe not all, but a lot of us are striving for, right? So in that environment where there's no state to enforce, maybe there would be a situation where like a hardware manufacturer, like a like somebody who makes the chips or whatever. Again, we're running chips. They have like some kind of like not license, but some sort of like agreement between industry players. Where like if you have like a for lack of a better word, a private license, you can have it so that like if you are someone who's going to clone, right? You cannot buy that hardware from that manufacturer because you're violating that private license. So you don't need the state to come in, you just don't have access to that hardware because it's a contract.
Ty, what happens though when someone decides to step out of that agreement, the cartel, and says, "Yo, we're not going to follow that rule"? Doesn't that ultimately have to be enforced?
Well, I mean, this is specifically with respect to hardware, right? And like say that there is a component that a manufacturer produces, that's like specifically like part of this license. You as a cloner cannot attain that piece of hardware because they're not going to sell it to you because you violated that private license.
So, I mean, if you just start from reality, like a little bit, it's like all hardware is closed. Okay, everything, all your Raspberry Pis are closed source. Everything that you have,
It's pound.
it's pound. Every single chip that you have on something, even if the source of it is viewable, it's closed. Okay, every single block that goes in the die.
Say pwned.
Pound.
Pound.
I can't do this. So, it becomes a sort of like LARPing exercise, of like which part of the stack is closed, which part of the stack is open. Like I choose not to live in a LARPing world. Like I just find it very counter sort of productive in that sense. I rather sort of like try to just like move forward a little bit with the stuff where possible and commercially viable, because DIY doesn't scale and it's not really as good as most commercial stuff, right? Realistically speaking. So how can we make sure that we have high quality commercial stuff that has some decent values in it, right? And move society forward. So that's sort of like the space I'd rather be in. And then like, I love the NCAP stuff. I still don't have a lot of answers, and I don't think anybody ever did. And if you read even Mises, like there is no full answer there to handle, especially modern complex societies.
Well, if we knew, then it'd be an argument for central planning, right?
Exactly, right? It's messy, right? And you just progressively become even more messy as we have less government. Governance without central planning, by definition, is decentralized, right? And rough consensus is going to be true on all this stuff.
But we argue that the complexity that gets added without the central planning is worth it, and it outweighs the negatives of the central planning.
It depends on what we consider central planning, and sure, stupid like modern government democracy stuff is all like done in bed, but you can still have, like, say we run a Citadel, right? We still gonna have some centralized committees, like sort of sorting out stuff because we don't want maybe duplication, right? We don't need more than one podcast.
False.
No, see, there is no answer to any of this stuff except from like you put your ass on the line, you build something, you try to sell it, and then you just handle the market as it comes.
Twitter fact checkers have determined that statement is misleading. Awesome. It doesn't have to be related to open source, by the way. Yeah.
It kind of is, though. So I bought a cold card originally because it was an innovative product design, the first air gapping that I knew of, and it was great for all of that. I think that when the cloner that we're thinking of came along, there was a huge demand for like QR signing, and I think that was the main difference in the product. I don't think like it was a clone thing so much as there's a demand for a different type of product. And I think that closing the source and holding back, merges and stuff for security, like it holds back the space in general. I think that I would have bought another cold card with the QR signing thing if you had come out with that, rather to be competitive. I don't think I would have, gone over to the other thing. But instead, you said you weren't going to build that, and then you
that's fair.
the source. I just think like
That's totally fair. I can see how from a user perspective, like, the QR thing is like, it looks like this big thing, right? But that's like 0.3% of the code base, right? The true value of the thing is that we don't lose your money, right? So no, that's totally fine, right? But now, if first of all, there is what Twitter wants, right? Like Twitter says it wants some QR or something like that. Like that is not true for the market. Like so much so that Trezor is still selling a design from 2013 that is unsecure. Ledger sells Jesus Christ a gazillion devices, and the device like you can barely read the screen, right? So there is sort of like a fake demand for it. It's cool and all people want to do
I
it.
don't think you'll know the demand to the product yourself.
Sure.
I
And
think there
here's
is
the
a
thing.
thing for it. There just isn't, a network share of people that know about it yet. It's clearly way easier than air gapping through SD cards and just as functional.
Well, it's because you haven't lost money on a bad QR yet, right? Or
Well, I mean, like Spectre's design, they use a particular barcode scanner so they can't infiltrate the camera.
well, we don't know what's on the other device. No, but it gets complicated, right? So a stack of complexity there.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that some people may want that, but the demand is so low that the cloner didn't sell even, I think, like half of the devices they had. Right? They just gave it away to try to sort of build some like like influencer demand or whatever, right?
I think if you had like not closed the source, I'd be more willing to buy your future products that innovate in similar ways. Whether you do an NFC and you're going that path rather than QR. But I think like keeping it more open, like you gain respect from that because it's not that you're closing it and screwing over some other product like decide to clone. It's that you're not afraid of it and you want to move forward in your own direction.
Yeah, I totally feel that, but first we cannot appease everyone, right? Everyone wants something different. We can't make our business decisions based solely on these things because the world is not fair, and people don't act morally, and like they're going to do stupid stuff. So we may lose a few customers. That was a known sort of like problem with changing that license, and I appreciate that. But you know what actually happened? We actually innovated more, right? We've been continuously adding more features, and we actually grew by like almost like 10x. So like the market is rewarding.
Use that code anymore to
What?
make other products as well. Though. So like you grew, but the space didn't grow. You cut off.
Well, it did. Like we're gonna learn about Arculus tomorrow.
This is all, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to close your source.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at you for doing that, and I think that's totally you're right. I just think like from a perspective of just
Do you build stuff?
trying to move everything forward.
Do you build stuff?
Not too much, but
No, but like, see, this is the thing. It's very. If you're not shipping a product, right, yourself, it's a lot easier to have opinions like that because you are not the one who actually pays the bills to get a factory to build inventory or to source parts or to develop the stuff, right? I forego opportunity cost to make that happen, right? While you're not shipping it, right? So you're not feeling that pain. And to you it may seem like a simple sort of like moral understanding of like like respect versus not whatever, right? And it's fair, right? But it's a very unnuanced view because again, it's no skin in the game, right? And again, it sucks that we may lose people like you. I'd love to have as a customer, right? Because Mark IV is awesome, but I can't appease everybody, and I'm following the market here, and we're trying to make the thing that we actually like, the thing that we want to make.
I just want to say I really appreciate your questions and comments.
Yeah.
We have one more question, and then we got to wrap this baby up.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Thanks. I had one question mostly. So if it is software, right? I realize that someone else is copying it, they can ship the product very soon. But if it's hardware, someone is cloning it, it's going to take some time for them to go along with the product. Will that not give you an advantage on like shipping products first? and getting like more market share. If someone is copying you, they're going to ship it like 2 months or 3 months later.
I think like what happened, like just from our perspective, is just a lot of noise and sucking of oxygen based on our sort of work. And it's just fuck it. Like, you know what? I'm gonna cut you off. If you're gonna be a dick with my stuff, I'm gonna cut you off. I have no issues with that. I don't see that as a bad thing.
Cheers to that. This has been a great conversation. I'd like to end it with final thoughts. We are closing up on time. Tony, final thoughts. Someone get that man a mic. He hasn't spoken in a while.
I'm just here for your pretty face. No, I
Accomplished.
Yeah, cut his jib over there.
no, I there's both sides to it. Such a nuanced discussion. Put nuanced bingo cards, everyone. But yeah, it's a very delicate issue, but I appreciate everyone jumping on to like kind of give their thoughts on it.
Awesome, thanks, Tony. Paul, final thoughts.
I work for Voltage, and Voltage is launching some cool stuff this week, so I'm pretty excited about that.
But
It just shipped the open science website.
Let's fucking go. We appreciate your help with that. It's been a long time coming. Final thoughts, Evan.
Looking very much for Cold Card to reverting their license at some point. In the meantime, I'll still keep supporting, maybe begrudgingly. Run your own node and download Zeus.
Thanks, Evan. NVK, final thoughts.
Mark IV is coming out. We have like really oversubscribed reservations. I hope to start shipping it next week. Nobody heard that. And the cards are coming out. And anyways, just check our stuff. We keep on innovating, even though it is a complicated license.
Awesome. Thank you, NVK. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Ross and the rest of the team that helped put this together. I'm really looking forward to BitDevs. We have food and drink in the back. Help yourself before BitDevs starts. It should start in about 25 minutes. I hope to see most of you at the open source stage over the next 3 days. It's absolutely massive at the conference. It was way bigger than I expected. And cheers. I love you all. Stay on the success.